He was the quiet heartthrob, the man who made falling in love look easy, until the women he loved started walking away. 3 marriages. 1 supermodel. A son he nearly lost in court. A much younger wife no one saw coming. But behind every failed romance was a pattern: silence, emotional distance, and a refusal to explain what kept slipping through his fingers. And that silence? It didn't just end marriages. It rewrote the narrative of who Richard Gere really was. In the 1980s, Richard Gere wasn't just an actor, he was a cultural shift. American Gigolo made him a sex symbol. Pretty Woman made him a legend. He didn't chase fame, it followed him. But while Hollywood crowned him irresistible, the one thing he couldn't seem to hold on to was love. Every relationship he touched either burned too fast, fell apart quietly, or ended in emotional war. And as his career soared, his private life started to fracture, again and again. But not all of it was by accident. In 1987, Richard Gere met Cindy Crawford. She was 21, he was 38. The most powerful man in Hollywood had just fallen for the most desired woman in fashion. Their romance was secretive. Their wedding in 1991 was a total surprise. Done in Vegas, with paper rings. That's how private it was, no press, no fuss. But love built in silence often dies the same way. By 1995, it was over. Publicly, they said all the right things. Privately, it was emptiness. Crawford admitted years later, "I didn't know myself." And he liked it that way. She followed him, but he never reached back. They weren't partners, they were appearances. And the tabloids? They didn't make it easier. As their marriage fell apart, rumors swirled, speculation about Gere's sexuality, emotional distance, even that the marriage had been a PR stunt. Neither addressed the gossip, but their silence became the headline. He vanished emotionally, she left physically. And just like that, his first high-profile love story was over. But it wouldn't be the last time he let love go without a fight. After Cindy, he waited. Then came Carey Lowell. A former Bond girl, smart, grounded, and a good match for his quieter, spiritual side. They dated for several years and had a son, Homer, in 2000. In 2002, they married. This time, it seemed different, stable, private, real. But beneath the surface, it was already unraveling. Gere had retreated again. Into Buddhism, into work, into himself. Lowell stayed until she couldn't anymore. By 2013, she filed for divorce. But this one didn't go quietly. The custody battle for Homer turned into a media circus. Gere's wealth was on the line, so was his reputation. Lowell claimed he was emotionally unavailable. Gere's team claimed she was using their son as leverage. The legal war lasted nearly 4 years. And the irony? Gere never once went on record to defend himself. Another woman, another courtroom, another chapter written in silence. But what no one expected was that his next love story would be with someone no one had even heard of. In 2014, Richard Gere met Alejandra Silva. Spanish. A publicist. 34 years younger. The age gap raised eyebrows. The cultural gap raised even more. But Gere, now in his mid-60s, looked different, softer, present. He didn't hide this relationship, he embraced it. In 2018, they married. In 2019, they welcomed their first child together. In 2020, a second child followed. And for the first time in decades, Gere wasn't avoiding questions. He was answering them with actions. He moved to New York, focused on his family. Alejandra called him the most humble man I've ever met. But critics kept talking. They said he was too old, she was too young, that he was hiding from aging by starting over. That this was a fantasy, not a future. But he didn't listen. Because for once, Richard Gere wasn't running, he was building. Still, the ghosts of the past hadn't left. Cindy Crawford taught him that youth and beauty can't mask emotional starvation. Carey Lowell showed him what it costs when silence becomes a weapon in a marriage. Alejandra Silva, it seems, gave him peace. But only because she entered at a time when Gere had finally surrendered control. What started as Hollywood's most desirable man's love story had become something else entirely. Not a fairy tale, not a scandal, but a quiet war between connection and avoidance. And Gere? He always chose quiet. Because the deeper story here isn't about fame. It's not about age gaps or red carpets or pretty woman fairy tales. It's about a man who spent decades loving, but never really letting anyone all the way in. Until now. So where does that leave him? Today, Richard Gere lives with Alejandra and their 2 young sons. He rarely gives interviews. He hasn't starred in a major blockbuster in years. And yet, he finally looks at ease. Not because he figured out love, but because he stopped pretending it had to look a certain way. The man who once couldn't hold a marriage past 4 years now wakes up to toddlers and toy trucks. The sex symbol of the 1980s is now changing diapers in his 70s. And maybe that's the twist no one saw coming. That after all the heartbreaks, all the silence, all the failed fairy tales, Richard Gere's real love story was never about passion. It was about presence. Comment, share, and subscribe for more layered stories which were scattered and have been combined into one alluring story that don't just entertain, but reveal what's been hiding in plain sight all along.